Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro. Today we've got Oak and Eden's Wheat and Spire and Bourbon and Spire. Hey everybody, Kyle the Drink Pro here with you yet again. Thank you so much, as always, for continuing to support this channel. Liking, commenting, and sharing this video with your friends makes a big difference. Subscribing helps even more. I know a lot of you watch these videos and don't subscribe. It really helps me out if you click that subscribe button. Hey, and if you want to see me all the time, click the bell for notifications. One other thing I want to mention, lovely t-shirt, the merch is available. Now this merch is a Patreon exclusive. If you want stuff like this, you gotta go to patreon.com/thedrinkpro and you can support the channel and get some really cool exclusive stuff. But there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of really cool merch. It's been designed by Yolanda. She's working with me to make some really cool stuff, and I'm hoping to have some extra special products coming very soon as well. Today I've got a couple of whiskeys from Mike McAllister. Now he's one of my patrons. He's been a supporter and a fan of the show. I appreciate everything he's done for me and continues to do for me. And I'm looking forward to trying these pretty unique pours. I haven't seen these around Indiana very much. I know they're just starting to trickle in, but at the time he sent these, they were nowhere to be found. Oak and Eden. Now this is an interesting company, basically because they're trying to use a new process. And I always get excited when I see people trying new things in the whiskey world. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail, but damn it, you've got to try new things. What they are doing with these two whiskeys, I've got, like I said, the Wheat and Spire and the Bourbon and Spire. And that and Spire part is really critical. What they're doing essentially is they're aging a whiskey through a normal process for a couple of years in American oak, and then they're finishing the whiskey not in a separate barrel. You get this, I think it's a 5-inch French oak piece of wood, a spiral cut piece of wood they put into the bottle with the whiskey to do sort of a finishing aging process. Now their website claims that French oak has twice as many natural herbal botanicals or something like that as American oak. I don't know if that's true or just marketing spin, but nonetheless, it's a cool idea to put wood into the bottle to finish the whiskey. There is some precedent for putting wood into whiskey as a finishing technique. In fact, one of the big companies, Maker's Mark, their private selection process is putting staves into the barrel with the whiskey. Now, this is putting the smaller pieces of wood into a bottle, but it's still a not unprecedented technique. It's just being applied in a unique way. So I'm looking forward to trying it. Again, thanks Mike McAllister for your support and for providing these samples. These are kind of fun sample bottles too. I think they're like travel shampoo bottles. So this is my travel whiskey, even though I'm not going anywhere. It's stuck to my hands. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with their wheated product. What the hell? I don't think this is how this is supposed to be done. What was I saying? I don't fucking remember. Oh, okay. This is their wheated product. So they don't disclose where this whiskey comes from, but the mash bill sounds very familiar. 51% corn, 45% wheat, 4% malted barley. That's an MGP mash bill. Similarly, I couldn't find the mash bill for their bourbon online, but it appears to be the high rye mash bill from MGP. I'm pretty confident these guys are using MGP in their process. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do it. I hope they plan to convert to using their own distillate, but that's just a great way to start off your company. So the wheater here is at 90 proof, so it's relatively low proof. And I believe that the oak stave is added after it's been proofed down when it's put into the barrel. So that's kind of different as well. It definitely smells like wheat. It smells like the grain. It smells like MGP, the 51-45-4 high wheat mash bill recipe. I will say it smells really good though. There's no sharpness to it. You know, new make almost always has this sort of metallic sharpness, almost smelling like the fermented mash itself. I get very little of that in this. This just smells like the grain. Smells like a little bit of sweetness from the corn. Definitely a notable, like I said, the wheat is really prominent as a grain. But as I keep smelling it, there's sort of more traditional classic wheater bourbon notes coming out. I'm getting some of that nice light vanilla, some caramel, maybe even some cinnamon. So I'm getting a lot of this sort of maple syrup precursor. It's not as heavy as maple syrup, but it's got that darker, richer sweetness, even though it's kind of subtle still. You can tell it's developing that direction. I'm also getting a nice cinnamon spice, very classic baking spice. I think I get a little bit of an orange or a lemon, some sort of classic citrus note as well. I think I'm also getting sort of a pine or eucalyptus, this sort of herbal, maybe even leaning towards an oaky, woody note that also has that bright sharpness of mint, hints of mint, I guess I would call it. Overall, though, on the nose of this, I would never guess this was a 2-year whiskey. I would guess this is a 3 or 4 year craft whiskey. So I'm kind of impressed so far because they only finish it by putting that oak stave in there. It's 2-year whiskey with oak added. So let's see if the taste is as good as the nose. Now, Mike's letter here, which I gotta say, I don't know what color that is, but I can't read it very well. Mike, I need to get you some black pens, my friend. Mike told me in his letter that the wheated bourbon, or wheated whiskey here, has an anise range of flavors because of the oak spire. At least that's what he thinks is causing it. So I'm curious to see if he's right, or at least if I agree. That's super impressive, guys. You can tell it's young. You can tell it's a wheater. But the added oak does some really cool things for the palate. So right up front, the sweetness is a lot more pronounced than you would expect from a young whiskey like this. Definite sweet, I would say caramel and vanilla, maybe even some confectioner sugar. Pretty damn sweet. That also comes from being a wheater, but even still, it's not a very developed wheater at only 2 years old. You can still taste the wheat grain. You can still tell it's a little bit young in the mid palate in particular. The mid palate really tells you that this is a young whiskey that had some finishing done to it. But right off the bat early, you get that nice big sweetness. Oh, and the finish comes in strong with bitter wood. Maybe a little bit more bitter than I like for myself, to be honest, but if you like a very oaky whiskey, I think this could be a real hit. For something that's young, you still get the sweetness, you still get a little bit of the grain in the mid palate, and then you get that finish of really pronounced oak. It's a little bit bitter, like I said, it's bitter oak, but it's definitely prominent oak. It's fresh wood. It's not bogged down. It's not toasted. It is fresh wood. Now, I do believe that the spires that go into this are toasted spires, but that toasted quality that sometimes you get from a toasted barrel, Elijah Craig, for example, that doesn't really show up on the palate here. Now, I don't know the price point on these, either of them, off the top of my head, but I'm pretty impressed with the wheater. Let's go ahead and try the bourbon. Now this bourbon and Spire is listed as barrel strength in Mike's letter here, which is interesting because I didn't see a barrel strength on the website, so maybe it was a limited release or something like that. I don't know, it's pretty cool. This tape is sticking to me and these bottles are not very forgiving. So I'm going to go ahead and just unscrew them instead of trying to use that squeeze top. There it is. All right, let's go ahead and nose this bourbon. I'm stuck on this fucking tape. Let's go ahead and nose this bourbon. Whoa, okay, something very interesting is happening to me. That reminds me an awful lot of some of those old-time bourbons, the Dusties, that have this sort of metallic, sweet, very metallic vibe going on the nose. I've never smelled that on anything that was a new product, so that really just like caught my eye for a minute, or nose, I guess. Catch by the nose, is that a thing? So disappointingly, that's starting to dissipate. You're getting less and less of that as I keep smelling it. But it's still a pretty damn good nose. I mean, again, you can tell it's young. There is no substitute for just time in a barrel. There's just no substitute for it. We've tried all kinds of things. People have tried sound waves. People have tried moving whiskey around and like just sloshing it. They've tried cutting holes in things. No substitute for time. But this Spire technique is doing something fun. Boy, I get a lot of cinnamon on this. I get a lot of sweet vanilla and caramel. I actually get a lot of fruit on this. This is pretty, I guess orange, maybe a little bit of citrus, but also sort of a cherry vibe. I love the way the rye spice is in there. I believe this is a high rye mash bill from MGP, and I love the way the rye spice is interacting with all this sweetness. The wheat has this sort of smooth, almost syrupy sugar sweetness, but because of the rye in this particular pour, I'm getting a wonderfully complex baking spice sweetness. It smells like a baked good. Like a cherry cobbler or like a cinnamon coffee cake. It really just smells like a bakery. I'm not mad about that at all. All right, let's go ahead and give this a taste. You can tell it's higher proof. It definitely stands out. I wouldn't have guessed this as 115. I probably would have said 105. So that's kind of cool. Overall, though, I don't think I prefer it. Oh, wait a minute. Coffee on the nose. After tasting it a couple times and going back to the nose, that's freaking cool. I'm getting like grapevines and coffee. Wow. Incredibly complex nose. The palate is not my favorite. I think I prefer the wheater on the palate. Not just because it's a lower proof, but I think the flavors are more in tune with what I expect from a wheat whiskey that's had more age on it. This is kind of in a different realm. Let me see if I can give you some more detail about what I mean by that. It's way super woody up front. Very few whiskeys that I like are woody initially, right off the bat. And it just continues. The wood just dominates in this one. I'm sorry. The nose is incredible. Amazing nose. But on the palate, I get this real unavoidable, overpowering oaky note that never leaves. Doesn't really change much. I mean, if you're looking for it, you can get a little bit of pecan, you can get a little bit of honey, and maybe a little pepper as well, but the gist of this whiskey is all oak all the time. If you like a really oaky whiskey, this might be a good option for you, but I just feel like it kind of misses the mark. And maybe it needs water. Do I have water? I do. Let's see what happens when I add water to it. You know, it's a barrel-proof whiskey, and sometimes whiskeys really aren't supposed to be at that proof. Even when you release them at that proof. Sometimes whiskeys are meant to be drank lower proof, just to get this sweet spot. A lot of times master distillers, when they make their own specific blends for their release, they don't usually release things at 130, 120 proof. I think part of that's because they understand the sweet spot of their spirit. And it varies from barrel to barrel even. Wow, the nose got way worse. All the youth came right to the front of the nose. But let's see if the taste is good. It brought out more of the sweetness early in the palate. I get a lot more honey and caramel, but it's still just not my thing. It's just too oaky to be enjoyable for me. I think you have to like just straight oak flavor to really get into this barrel strength bourbon. That wheat, though, that's a real consideration. I might have to pick up a bottle of that if I can find one for a reasonable price. Although that bourbon really isn't my thing, I'm pretty impressed with these guys. Oak and Eden is doing some cool stuff here with these little spires, and I'm really curious to see what else they can do, because I know they're working with some wines. I know they're working with some beers. They've got innovation on the way. So I look forward to seeing what else they can put out. I look forward to trying it, because although the bourbon wasn't really my thing, the wheater was. And I usually am a little bit skeptical about things like young wheat whiskeys, especially with this kind of process being put into them. That's sort of a big question mark. I'm excited about the future for these guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Keep drinking like professionals. I'm going to enjoy this whiskey. Cheers.